Alain Robbe-Grillet was a French writer and filmmaker. He was, along with Nathalie Sarraute, Michel, Butor and Claude, one of the figures most associated with the Nouveau Roman trend. Alain Robbe-Grillet was elected a member of the Académie française on 25 March 2004, succeeding Maurice Rheims at seat No. 32. He was married to Catherine Robbe-Grillet. Biography. Alain Robbe-Grillet was born in Brest to a family of engineers and scientists. He was trained as an agricultural engineer. During the years 1943 and 1944, Robbe-Grillet participated in compulsory labor in Nuremberg, where he worked as a machinist. The initial few months were seen by Robbe-Grillet as something of a holiday, since, in between the very rudimentary training he was given to operate the machinery, he had free time to go to the theatre and the opera. In 1945, Robbe-Grillet completed his diploma at the National Institute of Agronomy. Later, his work as an agronomist took him to Martinique, French Guinea, Guadeloupe, and Morocco. He died in Cannes after succumbing to heart problems. Work. Robbe-Grillet's first published novel was The Erasers, which was issued by Les Editions de Minuit in 1953. After that, he dedicated himself full-time to his new occupation. His early work was praised by eminent critics, such as Roland Barthes and Maurice Blanchot. Around the time of his second novel, he became a literary advisor for Les Editions de Minuit and occupied this position from 1955 until 1985. After publishing 4 novels, in 1961, he worked with Alain Robbe-Grillet, writing the script for Last Year in Marienbad, and he subsequently wrote and directed his own films. In 1963, Robbe-Grillet published for a new novel, a collection of previously published theoretical writings concerning the novel. From 1966 to 1968, he was a member of the High Committee for the Defense and Expansion of French. In addition, Robbe-Grillet also led the Centre for Sociology of Literature at the Université Libre de Brussels from 1980 to 1988. From 1971 to 1995, Robbe-Grillet was a professor at New York University, lecturing on his own novels. Although Robbe-Grillet was elected to the Académie française in 2004, in his 80s, he never was formally received by the Académie because of disputes regarding the Académie's reception procedures. Robbe-Grillet both refused to prepare and submit a welcome speech in advance, preferring to improvise his speech, as well as refusing to purchase and wear the Académie's famous green tails and sabre, which he considered outdated. Style. His writing style has been described as realist or phenomenological, or a theory of pure surface, methodical, geometric, and often repetitive descriptions of objects replace the psychology and interiority of the character. The reader must slowly piece together the story and the emotional experience of jealousy, for example, in the repetition of descriptions, the attention to odd details, and the breaks in repetitions, a method that resembles the experience of psychoanalysis, in which the deeper unconscious meanings are contained in the flow and disruptions of free associations. Timelines and plots are fractured, and the resulting novel resembles the literary equivalent of a cubist painting. Yet his work is ultimately characterized by its ability to mean many things to many different people. Novels. Robbe-Grillet wrote his first novel, A Regicide, in 1949, but it was rejected by Gallimard, a major French publishing house, and only later published with minor corrections by his lifelong publisher Les Editions de Minuit in 1978. His second novel, Erases, superficially resembles a detective novel, but it contains within it a deeper structure based on the tale of Oedipus. The detective is seeking the assassin in a murder that has not yet occurred, only to discover that it is his destiny to become that assassin. His next and most acclaimed novel is The Voyeur, first published in French in 1955 and translated into English in 1958 by Richard Howard. The Voyeur relates the story of Matthias, a traveling watch salesman who returns to the island of his youth with a desperate objective. As with many of his novels, The Voyeur revolves around an apparent murder. Throughout the novel, Matthias unfolds a newspaper clipping about the details of a young girl's murder and the discovery of her body among the seaside rocks. Matthias' relationship with a dead girl, possibly that hinted at in the story, is obliquely revealed in the course of the novel, so that we are never actually sure if Matthias is a killer or simply a person who fantasizes about killing. Importantly, the actual murder, if such a thing exists, is absent from the text. The narration contains little dialogue, and an ambiguous timeline of events. Indeed, the novel's opening line is indicative of the novel's tone. It was as if no one had heard. The Voyeur was awarded the Prix des Critiques. Next, he wrote La Jalousie in 1957, one of his few novels to be set in a non-urban location, in this instance banana plantation. In the first year of publication only 746 copies were sold, despite the popularity of The Voyeur. Over time, it became a great literary success and was translated into English by Richard Howard. Robbe-Grillet himself argued that the novel was constructed along the lines of an absent third-person narrator. In Robbe-Grillet's account of the novel, the absent narrator, a jealous husband, silently observes the interactions of his wife and a neighbor, Frank. The silent narrator, who never names himself, is extremely suspicious that A is having an affair with Frank. Throughout the novel, the absent narrator continually replays his observations and suspicions, so much so that it becomes impossible to distinguish between observed moments or suspicious moments. In 1984 he published what he described as an intentionally traditional autobiography, entitled Le Miroir qui revient, translated into English as Ghosts in the Mirror, by Joe Lovey. Films. Robbe-Grillet's career as a creator of fiction was not restricted to the writing of novels. For him, creating fiction in the form of films was of equal importance. His film career began when Alain Robbe-Grillet chose to collaborate with him on his 1961 film Last Year at Marienbad. The film was nominated for the 1963 Académie Award for Writing Original Screenplay and won the Golden Lion when it came out in 1961. In the credits, it was presented as a film equally co-authored by Alain Robbe-Grillet and Alain Robbe-Grillet. Robbe-Grillet then went on to launch a career as a writer-director of a series of cerebral and often sexually provocative feature films which explored similar themes to those in his literary work. He commenced with Le Mortel, which won the much-coveted Louis Deluc Prize of 1962. This was followed by his most commercially successful film, after Last Year at Marienbad, Trans-European Express, starring Jean-Louis Trintignant, who continued to work with Robbe-Grillet on his next 4 films. His French-Slovak film L'Homme qui ment, Muz, Quatorze Luz, Le Dernier Après, Eden Apotem, Glissements Progressifs du Plaisir and Le Jeu avec le Feu. It was almost a decade before the appearance of his next feature film, La Belle Captive. But Alain Robbe-Grillet was fortunate enough to enlist the services of Henry Allegan as cinematographer, the visionary master of cinematography for the films of Jean Cocteau. Subsequently, more than a decade passed before Alain Robbe-Grillet got behind the lens again. this time filming a mystery thriller on a small Greek island with Fred Ward starring as the confused Frank in Umbrut qui Ren Fou. Robbe-Grillet. Before his death in 2008, Robbe-Grillet was to direct one more film, Gradiva, which brought once more to the fore his preoccupation with sadism and bondage in his fiction. Perhaps the best introduction to the film works of Alain Robbe-Grillet is the volume The Erotic Dream Machine by Professors Roxy Smith and Anthony N. Fragler. Also of great value is the volume In the Temple of Dreams, the writer on the screen, in which Robbe-Grillet himself explains the relationship between his literary fiction and his cinematic fiction. Bibliography. Fiction on Regicide. Les Gommes Fainéant Prize. Le Voyeur. Le Jalousie. Dans le Labyrinth. La Maison de Rendez-vous. Projet pour une Révolution in New York. La Belle Captive. Topologie d'un Cité Fantôme. Souvenirs du Triangle d'Or. Gin. La Reprise. Un roman sentimental. Short story collection instantaneous. Romanesques. Le Miroir qui revient. Angelical Enchantement. Les Derniers Jours de Corinthe. Essays pour un Nouveau Roman. Le Voyageur. Essai et Intuitions. Préface et une vie d'écrivain. Film works available as Ciné Novels 1960. L'année dernière Marianne Bad les éditions de Minuit Assin. B005 MP60 number. 1963, Le Mortel les éditions de Minuit Assin. B0014Q17Z6. 1974, Glissements Progressifs du Plaisir les éditions de Minuit Assin. B0048IY7OK. 2002, C'est Gradiva qui vous appelle les éditions de Minuit ISBN 9782-7073-1793-3. Other works. In 1975, Robbe-Grillet and René Magritte published a book entitled La Belle Captive. The book is referred to as a roman, and is illustrated with 77 paintings by Magritte interspersed with discourse written by Robbe-Grillet. The eponymous film La Belle Captive, written and directed by Robbe-Grillet, was released in 1983. Collaborations Temple aux Miroirs, with Irina Ionesco. Filmography. Le Mortel. Trans-European Express. L'homme qui ment. Muz. Katori Luz. The Redonné Après. Eden Apotem. En après les acutes. Glissements Progressifs du Plaisir, starring Anasay et Alvina, Olga Georges Picot, Michel Lonsdale, Jean Martin, editor Bob Wade, producer Roger Boublil. Les Jeux avec le Feu, Playing with Fire. La Belle Captive, starring Daniel Mesgage, Gabriel Lazure, Ceriel Claire, Daniel Emelfork, Roland Dubillard, François Charmit. The Blue Villa, starring Fred Ward, Ariel Dombal. C'est Gradiva qui vous appelle, starring James Wilby, Ariel Dombal, Danny Verissimo.